Hola, film gods. Every single one of you beautiful people that are listening today on this Sunday as we begin April. It seems to fly by. It's going to be Christmas before we know it. We're going to have had a busy summer. Everyone's going to have had an amazing year. And you are all phenomenal human beings. So welcome. I am your host, Isusko, aka the Time Scheduler on the Instagrams and the socials. And then at Film God Podcast. Go check us, go follow, go share, go like. Another wonderful ep we have today. There are no spoilers. Okay, so if you haven't watched Adolescence, please, I implore you, whether you got kids or not, go watch it. It's already breaking records on Netflix. It's lovely to see British people and British stories being told, the writing, the acting, and obviously all of the cinematography, because it's all a oneer. And we've got two of the camera team, so drone op and camera operator today, and we're talking through it. There's no spoilers, as I said, but there's a few little Easter eggs. So if any of you are into film and you want to, you're going to watch it and rewatch it and you go, that's what they were talking about. It's that van there's got all the, I'm not going to tell you what the van's got because you got to listen to the ep. And as you know, I just send love to everyone that's listening. Still getting global listens and downloads, which honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to you all for listening. Something that I read today on the Daily Dad, which actually I think is something for all of us, and it's that power that comes from boredom. And Ryan Holiday, who is the author of the Daily Dad, Stoic philosopher, he talks about it for children and how we try, and if you've got kids, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, then from your own perspective, we do this. We have such busy lives, and everyone loves to be busy. It's like a badge of honor. Oh, I only got 3 hours sleep. Oh, I did so much. I got busy. But what are you being busy for? What's the reason? What you're not looking into, what you're not trying to figure out by kind of keeping busy. And that beauty of being bored, of daydreaming, of just having a moment to yourself to just look out the window and just be and just enjoy this minute instead of, oh, I've got to send out emails, I've got to try and get work, or I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. Taking a moment for yourselves is so important. And so hopefully, whilst you're listening to this, you might be in the car, you might be on your walk, or you might just be sitting outside on a chair in the sun, watching the clouds go by and listening to some people talk about a beautiful program that was made with amazing cast and just phenomenal crew above and below the line. So please enjoy the ep. If you do, give us a 5-star rating on the Apple Podcast, on the Spotify's, anywhere that you're watching this. It just helps. Just helps us kind of keep in the charts and get more people listening, which would be a beautiful thing. So a little free gift back to me would be beautiful. Enjoy your Sunday. Shout out to Creative Caves. Shout out to Cine Certified. And let's get to the episode.
Ladies and gentlemen.
So, Film God family, you already know what you're going to be listening to because you've seen the title. We've got two absolutely phenomenal human beings who actually just in the chat before, I found out one of them is actually a world champion in something, and he might tell us what it is. I don't know, but I was fucking blown away when he talked about it. But it leads us to the point that getting into the film industry isn't always one way. It's not always film school. It's not always I've got a father, a brother, a thing, a sister, a cousin. You can just start off with a passion and end up doing a project like the two chaps here have been on, which have broken Netflix records that I watched recently. And honestly, the last episode, the last scene, if anyone has a dry eye having watched that, you are dead inside. All right, I'm just going to say it. So, enough from me. Let's get to the boys. So, chaps, what is your name and what's your role on the call sheet?
My name's Aaron. I'm the drone pilot for Adolescence episode 2.
Slash
Yeah,
world champion. Say the world
slash world
champion. Come
champion.
on. Slash world
Yeah,
champion. It's
slash
amazing.
world champion.
Amazing.
And my name's James Davis. I'm a camera operator, and I worked on Adolescence episode 2 with Aaron.
Amazing. So, chaps, we have got probably not enough time for me to ask all the questions that I have to ask about the logistics and the in and the out and the thing and the this and all the rest of it. But just for that, so everyone can gauge who you are, just give us a little quick kind of minute or two bio about your history and how you got into the film industry and how you got onto Adolescence.
So
Do you want to go first, Aaron?
yeah, okay. So I started out flying remote control helicopters when I was a kid, and I got pretty good at it. Became a world champion. And then I started doing. I moved across into drones, doing outside broadcast stuff. I did Extreme E, which is an electric off-road racing series,
Wow.
and did some triathlon stuff as well, like outside sports. And then I kind of moved across into film through a contact that I was working with on the outside broadcast stuff. Started freelancing for a few different companies, and then eventually was offered a job by a company called the Helicopter Girls, which is where I work now, flying drones full time in film. And yeah, it's just gone from there really. Adolescence approached the Helicopter Girls looking for a drone pilot, and Helicopter Girls put me on it. So yeah, that's how I managed to get on it.
Amazing. What about you, James?
I've worked as a camera operator for just over 15 years or so now. And around 2018, I was one of the youngest ever members to join the ACO and become an ACO accredited camera operator. I've been doing Steadicam for 15 years, gimbals and remote heads for 12 years, tracking vehicles for probably about 10 years. And recently, in the last few years, begun working in aerials as well, and kind of bringing my kind of skill sets, various skill sets from kind of remote camera systems across the board into that kind of realm, and my experience like tracking with vehicles and kind of doing kind of higher speed, kind of or more precise stuff where you're kind of moving through 3D space. And yeah, I've been working with Aaron for a while. I've known the Helicopter Girls for quite a long time, since their company started. And in the last few years, we just seemed kind of like a logical move with all my other experience to kind of get into the aerial side of things as well. And I've teamed up with Aaron on a lot of shoots. And yeah, they contacted Adolescence, contacted the Helicopter Girls. They mentioned it was, kind of gimbals, it was handoffs, it was drones, it was all these things combined. And they needed, not just a good kind of drone pilot and a good operator, but a kind of team that could kind of come together and kind of handle all of that stuff together. And yeah, thankfully, I've got a kind of a kind of quite a wealth of experience in that kind of in those kind of areas. And the actual system that was used to do the drone handoff in the episode was actually something I invented nearly 10 years ago, hilariously.
Wow.
And we come back full circle and ended up using it on a really amazing award-winning show. And it's incredible to create something like that with something that, I remember developing with two other guys in a room on a piece of paper, kind of figuring out how to make it work before we engineered it. And there it was, kind of sat on a octocopter, kind of sending a Ronin 4D half a mile down the road. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, from a camera crew and even AD logistics people perspective, the idea of a one taker, like we've all done a one taker, but it might have been a 90-second commercial, it might have been a 3-minute promo, but that kind of Russian arc level of an hour of no changing cards, of no changing camera batteries, of no going to the toilet, of no, just all of these things. That I just watched the episode, and I've watched it now, and I'm like, and you kind of try and find the little bits that happen and the things and and then all of a sudden you just get sucked into the world and you kind of forget that it is a one take. And I guess there's so many questions around the kind of those elements of it.
I think that's the magic of a really great oneer,
Yes.
is if it's done really well, you feel like you're there
Yeah.
in the world of the actors. And
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it so special, is it draws you in. It draws you in not just to the camera movement, maybe at first, if you're really, a kind of a cinephile and a film fan and a TV. At first, like you said, you're watching, you kind of go, oh, they're not cutting away, they're not cutting
Yeah.
away. But there's only so long you can kind of think like that when you're witnessing incredible performances and incredible camera movement and actor blocking choreography. Because after about, in my mind anyway, even though I've done a lot of oneers in my career, including ones this long actually before as well, I think there's just a point after about the 4 or 5 minute mark where you just get absorbed into it if it's really good. And I think what made, away from what we did, what made Adolescence so incredibly good was the fact that the whole time you're just watching these amazing performances from these amazing actors.
Agreed.
And, you just kind of get sucked in. And even I was getting, I was sitting there kind of during a lot of the takes, we had, I
Well,
had an
I need to
audio
be on
feed.
his close up, but I've
I,
got carried away.
do you know what was really great was I actually had a live audio feed the whole time, right? So because we were surrounded by sound, sound department, right, the whole time. There was like boom mics and radio mics everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So you had to be really careful where you spoke on the comms and stuff like that, so that you didn't ruin a take, right? So a lot of the time we were going off of audio dialogue cues. So we all had earpieces in, all of the operators, the focus puller, everyone, so we could hear the dialogue cues. So most of the time you could just, after maybe, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 kind of rehearsal run throughs or whatever, you could kind of pick up exactly where you were or where the camera was in the scene just off the back of the dialogue pretty much. After a little while, yeah.
Like, are you? So I guess let's get into the kind of the process of it.
Mm.
So you from how this worked and how a normal job will work for both of you in that kind of process, right? You've both worked in long form. You've both done
Yeah,
it where we've kind of shot, reverse shot, and cut to the wide and cut to the thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
from a oneer perspective, how
yeah.
did it change? What different processes did you have? Did you have longer prep? Did you have more rehearsal? Obviously, you had more rehearsals, but just talk us through that kind of pre-shoot process.
Yeah, so we had a kind of rehearsal week, which was really pretty much without the camera doing any kind of full run. So it's really just kind of see where everyone needed to be, where the camera needs to be, where the extras needed to be, where the actors need to be. And it was predominantly kind of working through that, working through
Straight normal shooting day. You got your 7:30
normal shooting
breakfast
day,
8 o'clock call, and then
yeah, but we weren't really using a camera. The 4D was kind of there, but it was really kind of there mainly for us to do little kind of practice things with the handoffs and stuff like that. We weren't actually rolling on anything or even
Mhm.
rolling on the video. Most of the time, it was like with an iPad viewfinder or just physically walking through and kind of going, right, if we're here at this point, then another operator needs to be there. The wheels need to be disassembled during this scene and taken over here during that scene, because there was quite a lot of logistical stuff going on in the background, and also about what actors needed to be where at what time. And there was a lot for them to kind of deal with before we even really put a camera on it, or attempted to kind of move ourselves around the scene. And of and actually, I mean, big shout out to, well, to everyone who worked on this job, but
Yes.
I was really blown away by how good Matt, the DP, was at hiding the lighting and his lighting team.
Yes.
Because I tell you what, there was not one rehearsal or one take where I saw a single light in shot or even on the edge of frame. And it was so well orchestrated. And we were going inside, outside, into dark rooms, into bright
Yes.
rooms. It was just constant different skin tones of different actors. It was so beautifully balanced. That whole school episode, when you watch it, I mean, I think you really, when you appreciate the scale of the area that we shot in, to light all of that
Yep.
is like just a feat in itself. I
I
mean,
think
it was
most
quite
people will probably
impressive.
look at it and go, didn't do any lighting. You're like, no, no, no.
Oh,
Yes, we were
there is a
shooting
lot.
outside and there's a lot practical, but I tell you what, there would have been
Yeah.
like the rigging and the prep. So you kind of even
Oh,
think once you've
yeah.
rehearsed it and you kind of know where you are, you kind
Yeah.
of, I don't know if you did like a day rehearsal, a day of lighting, or an afternoon of lighting, a day rehearsal, how did, I mean, it's just so many questions. There's so many questions. But Aaron, how did you find the process of coming into because they've already done episode 1, so you're kind of episode 2. Did you have anything to do with one, or is it different crews? And then how did the differentiation between the different crews? Because I guess the DP would have been across the whole thing. How did you find coming in for Ep 2?
I mean, we didn't do anything on episode 1. The only drone shot was on episode 2. So there wasn't really much change to experience. We were just kind of dropped in at the deep end of episode 2, I guess. But yeah, I think the only real pressure I felt was the fact that we were right at the end of the shot, or right at the end of the take. So being 50 minutes into a take where everybody's nailing it towards the end anyway, everybody's nailing it, and then everyone comes outside to watch the big finale. And you're taking the drone off and sending it 300 meters away to a totally different scene. Yeah, I mean that's the only real pressure I felt, to be honest.
Beautiful, because you were saying before we started recording that actually the rehearsal time. So you had like a week prep, a week rehearsal, and then a week shoot for the ep. That, I mean, two things. Firstly, being that close to the end, every time they're rehearsing, there's always going to be something that kind of goes wrong. You're like, oh fuck, right, we've got to start again. You're like, okay, we've got to start again. So you're probably your section that you had to rehearse, you more than likely didn't have as much time as the whole week, because it was probably only day 3 or day 4 maybe by the time they actually got it all nailed, to your point. And then actually when they came to shoot it, they then threw you a little curveball at the end as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So the rehearsal week, we rehearsed kind of our original shot that we were doing, which was just a handoff to reveal the landscape. And then I think it was on the shoot week towards the end, maybe it was like the second to last day, the execs came in and were like, oh, we've had an idea because we want Stephen in this episode. We want basically you to fly over to the crime scene where Stephen's going to be. He's going to be looking at the crime scene with tears
and land in the car park, and
land in the car park. And I was like, well, I need to maintain visual line of sight of the drone because I need to fly the drone. So Stephen basically came up to me and said, look, I want this shot. Tell me what you need to make it happen. And I just said, I need a tracking vehicle, and me and James need to be on this tracking vehicle so that we can basically send it and follow the drone to the crime scene. And then obviously the 2 grips that were handing off the drone then had to get into a van with Matt and drive to the crime scene in front of us so that they were then ready to catch the drone at the crime scene.
There's a funny little Easter egg on that, right? And Aaron's probably noticed this as well, is if you watch the episode carefully, Isusko, you'll see just as the drone starts to go down the road, there's a white people carrier van that comes into shot and flies down the road at breakneck speed. I mean, within the speed limit. Within the speed limit on a locked off road, and that is the van with all the people in. That's the van with with the DOP in and the 2 grips and all that. But
I assumed there was a car in the car park that you had people hidden, just like watching shit, just waiting. They're like, okay, it's coming, it's in the air, it's part of the thing, it's coming in. Right, get out of that 18 star, get out of the van, go catch the thing.
Well, the funny thing was when we actually started doing that shot, and I know, God, Aaron will remember this, like with probably a lot of mental anguish. It was like we did the shot, and they were like, you know what? It just needs to all happen faster, like a lot faster.
Yeah.
And and we were like, we're already. I was talking to Aaron, and we were discussing it, weren't we? We were like, you're already flying at about 40 mile an hour at that point, weren't you, through the air?
Yeah.
Right. So it's already what they didn't realise, because everything was so wide, they looked at it like, oh, it doesn't feel like it's moving that fast. But actually, Aaron was probably clocking, I would say, a good 40 mile an hour easily.
Wow.
And the thing is, when you've got a drone that big with all that stuff on it, it also takes a while to slow down because you've not got like brakes or anything. You just have to kind of like try and you have to kind of reverse into the air basically, and kind of like break in the air and kind of drag your speed off. So
which drone did you use? The big ones?
As a free fly Alta 8. So it was quite a big one, big boy.
Yeah, big octocopter, wasn't it? And then when we went for it at the speed they wanted to do, what we did, must have been doing about 50, 55 or something, weren't we? Or
wow.
Yeah,
the drone.
The drone, yeah.
Yeah.
easily, because we were flat out in the tracking vehicle and we couldn't keep up with it. We were just literally like, it was getting away from us. So we were probably doing about 30 or 35 in the tracking vehicle, and that was the very top speed of this electric tracking vehicle.
Yeah.
And all you could see was the drone kind of just gradually pulling away from us all the way down.
I was on the front. I was on the front of the tracking vehicle flying the drone, and I turned back to the driver. I'm like, "Can we go any faster? Like, come on, come on, come on, come on." He's like, "No, I'm maxed out. I'm maxed out." And this drone's just slowly turning into a black dot. And I'm like, "I've got to land this into some bloke's hands in a minute." Like, I can't. But
so obviously, just to say, the roads are locked off for anyone. It's like the roads are locked off.
Yes.
You got stewards, you got marshals, you got everyone in and around the houses. What have got
it's all done with appropriate permissions.
Exactly.
Location control, big AD team.
Yeah,
that were very cleverly hidden in the scene. It was all done, fully a legitimate way with appropriate permits in place and everything. But yeah,
it's a beautiful shot. But that kind of drone shot, as it gets handed off, you start chasing it and it flies off. Then suddenly kind of throwing the curveball, going, we've got to land it into someone's hands to then start tracking in. Do you get given that much time to figure it out, or is it just classic film crew? Don't worry, give me a take or two and we'll get it sorted.
Well, I think I think as mentioned before, it was a very much late in the day decision to go with that shot. So we weren't given. I think we were given one rehearsal for that, and then actually Matt, the DP, turned around on the final day and said, "Look, we've got 2 takes left. The rehearsal went okay, but it wasn't perfect. The wind and everything is a factor here. We might not be able to fly the drone because it's due to rain. So let's just get one in the bag where we do the original take, the original drone shot, get one in the bag, have a safety one. And then the final take was where we went for it and did the big boy drone shot where we landed at the crime scene. And that was the take they used.
Amazing. So how many?
We were given 2 opportunities to get it right.
I was going to say 2. So 2, you had 2 goes at it, and is the second? How did it work throughout the day then? So if you had kind of a week of shooting, out of how many takes did you get full run throughs done, or was it all quite seamless?
Well, we were doing two takes a day, and I think even if mistakes were made during those takes, we'd still go through the whole thing anyway, just so that everybody got an opportunity to do their thing.
So what, 1 in the AM, 1 in the PM?
Yeah.
Okay. Any rehearsals before you shoot, just to finalize things, walk through it, check this, check that?
We got, I think it was during the tech week, we got a few opportunities to rehearse, like before they'd started doing takes and stuff. We were with the DP and the grips, doing rehearsals of just drone handoffs. We'd hand it off. I'd come into land, hand off again, come into land, just to make sure that the transition was seamless and you couldn't see it in the shot, basically.
And I saw some of the behind the scenes, because I think that some of the behind the scenes stuff, some people that aren't that filmy or interested in film, they hear one take and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool, whatever." And then other people just don't believe it. So they kind of see the camera being passed through the window, and everyone, I just saw the comments was like, "What did they do? How did they get through the window?" You're like, "Well, no, obviously the pane of glass wasn't there, and we put it back in post." Is the natural thought. But you're like some of the behind the scenes stuff, the way that people were, I guess there's this dance that always happens on a film set. And especially when you're in Steadicam, especially when you're doing something that needs this choreography between cast and camera. That relationship that you have, is that something that, is there like an innate instinct that sometimes you're like, I've got to go faster, I've got to go slower, I've got to go left, I've got to go, how much of it is instinct, or how much of it is just sheer repetitive rehearsal?
What, in terms of flying the drone?
In terms of flying that drone.
So I think like you get an idea of what they're after, and you just kind of it's a lot of instinct, like you are on the spot. I think each take was different, but yeah, you are kind of like very much put on the spot and making decisions at that time rather than relying on rehearsal, because you've got different practices. You've got like wind, other kinds of stuff where you're being pushed off of a line and you have to keep up to that line.
You got to hit that car
and there's
park.
actually exactly, and the car park. You may notice that the shot kind of veers off left slightly in the final take because we're on the ground in a tracking vehicle. And along that road that we're driving along, there's massive trees and houses and stuff that you have to kind of look over and look past. And they wanted to fly directly over the leisure centre, so it was a straight line into the car park, but it wasn't doable because I'd have to fly behind trees and buildings and all kinds of stuff where actually that wasn't possible. So like, I think we figured that out during the rehearsal time, that they wanted to fly over the leisure centre, but which was possible from the fixed position of the original shot because I could look directly down the line at the leisure centre and see it. So I could absolutely fly over the leisure centre. But on the tracking vehicle, because we were following the line of the road, I was then on the other side of the trees, so I couldn't fly over. So we'd have to fly over the road and then cut back in towards the leisure centre.
Amazing. And that shows a level of creative understanding from the people making the decisions, that you're like, look, our ideal shot is this, but actually to do that with a new ending, the safest way is that I have to do this. And everyone goes, fine. Do you know what? We'll take the hit on going that line because we want to get the end bit. And the end bit's just, I mean, Stephen Graham is such a phenomenal actor. And as it comes down and it gets handed off and he gets the flowers and he moves over and you're like, this dude, you could probably just watch Stephen Graham say nothing and know exactly what what he's going through.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happened at the end of the second episode, wasn't it? It was literally just a push in on his face to see the kind of the ordeal that he was going through. He didn't say a single word, but it still sent a powerful message. I felt it was he's an amazing actor for sure.
Yeah.
Talking about that dance between actor and camera, because also as I'm watching it and I'm looking at the rehearsals, you kind of think there's times, and I'm sure you probably were in conversations with the DP and the rest and director about it, but it's like, who gets the close up? Do you lead in a door? Do you follow through a door? You know, all of these kind of things that no one really thinks about. From my perspective, I'm like, well, if I'm looking out the door, I need to have some background extras that are in the schoolyard, or if I'm going in, I might need someone to go up the stairs. So was it just through the rehearsals that it made sense as to, are you leading someone in, are you following someone in, and whose line? Because there's times that actually you're just you go from one conversation to another, and there's this slow little movement, and there's at times there's like no one in frame, but you're finding that next person. So how did those processes go during the rehearsals as to who got the line? How did it work? Is it, just have a little chat through that for me.
Yeah, so I think I played a little bit obviously earlier in my role as well in the episode. So my role played a part earlier in the episode before the drone sequence as well. Although initially I was supposed to just be doing the aerials and the kind of the handoff section and all of that. After a lot of discussion with Matt, the DP, and Lee, the other operator on the show, it turned out it was quite useful to actually have a third operator helping out with other elements as well. And that kind of came down to choreography, logistics, all those kind of things, because, for example, there's quite a few like handovers and handoffs and stuff before we even really get to the drone. And there's obviously a lot of stair work in the beginning as well. As you see, there's a lot of going up and down stairs. So interesting, there's only actually one section where we lead DI Bascom and the other officer up the stairs, and it was that one that was probably the most problematic in the beginning, because we were working out the pace that we wanted to have the actors travel up the stairs, and Matt was realizing that doing it on his own he would have to run backwards. And we had a discussion, and I'd already been using the 4D quite a lot at that point, as had he, and I kind of knew a lot of the technicalities, the nuances of things you could do with it. So he came up with an idea where basically Matt did the equivalent of like the classic kind of steady cam move called the Don Juan position, where you shoot with the camera over your shoulder whilst so you kind of shoot backwards whilst traveling forwards, right? So that's very
Mm.
hard to do with gimbals, because gimbals are in the hand, so they're quite awkward to position into that, into that kind of method of shooting like a Steadicam would be.
Yeah.
But the Ronin 4D has a very clever kind of mode called lock mode, and basically you push a button and you can kind of reposition it anywhere around your body, and then someone can take over on the wheels and operate the camera independently. So what we did was we came up with a
Nice.
really clever bit of timing where we switched into that mode. Matt got into a safe position so he could physically run forwards up the stairs, and I basically operated that sole leading shot up the staircase on the wheels for him, and then handed
Where were
the
you
control
based?
back to
In a
him.
in a
So I was in another room in another part of the building
yeah.
when Matt was starting this shot. So what we did was we kind of handed over control during the shot to me on the wheels, so I could
Hmm.
operate the camera whilst Matt was pointing, whilst Matt was running forwards up the stairs, and the camera was pointing backwards over his shoulder. And then what we did was we came up with a perfect kind of timing section in the dialogue where I would then hand control back to him. He would position himself in the right way and then carry on the rest of the shot. So you can see there's a moment in the dialogue where the two characters actually pause at the top of a set of stairs. So we come round out of that staircase quite aggressively into like a sudden kind of pan and land on them. And as we land on them, that's the moment that Matt and I kind of change over control again. And it's like
Mm.
a 2-3 second moment. It looks just like a pause in the conversation, but actually that was a creative pause in the actor choreography to allow us to get the camera choreography we needed, because it was a very fast-paced move. And then after I did that, they actually removed all of the remote wheels and everything and put them on the tracking vehicle for the end of the shot. And then I had to go and run off and do some other stuff. So I also then had to do the railing handover where they're about just before the classroom kind of chase scene. So the
Yes.
camera gets passed through a railing from Lee to me.
Hmm.
I then carry the shot all the way into the classroom, and then while I'm doing that, Lee is running off round to the other side of the building, and he's waiting for me to do the window pass through shot, which
Yep.
everyone's also talking about as well, and wondering how he did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was really cool about that as well is that we're kind of heading towards the window, right? So I can never ever, every time I did that shot, even in rehearsals, I can never actually see Lee, because Lee has to be out of shot until the very last moment.
It's
So
trust.
I'm literally, each time I did that shot, I'm basically throwing the camera through the window and hoping that Lee is going to be coming out of from behind the window at exactly the right moment every time. And I tell you what, fair play to Lee, he did not miss his mark once during that shot.
Wow.
We did that shot so many times in rehearsals, in the takes. I lost count of how many times I threw that camera through a window. And
Physically, not because normally on a film set, anytime we're handing something over, you hand it over.
yeah,
It's mine. Lens is mine. Got it. Thing. It's
this is
this one we're just fucking
this was
launching
not
about.
this is not a gentle handover. This was me sprinting full speed through the classroom, and then I had to do this kind of weird kind of like pivoting maneuver and basically one arm the camera through the window with my right hand at the exact moment that Lee was on the opposite side. Because when you watch the characters, they literally jump through the
Jump
window on the
through.
other
Yeah. Yeah.
they're jumping through the window. So there was
Yeah.
no way there was no gentle way to make the camera move that fast without really
No.
being quite aggressive with it. Yeah. So
And the thing is, from the acting perspective, he had to jump through that window because if he kind of slowly, for the police officer would have just grabbed him and pulled him back in.
he's being chased by
He's
a
been
copper.
chased.
He
Yeah.
wants to get away from the police officer. He's not going for a casual stroll in the park, or walk down to the
Well,
playground or something.
oh,
So
actually,
yeah.
talking on that scene, there was something I think on Ashley's socials that I think on that episode, as he's running towards the end,
Mm.
I think he was saying that he called out the wrong name or he called out the actor's name
Oh
and it
yeah.
was like, instead of the cast character name, he called out the actual character name. He was like, it's like 50 minutes into it, and it was like I think it was the second or the third, or so it was one of the like early on takes, and he was just
I,
like,
I, re- I remember that, and
oh.
and he had some choice words into the mic after he made the mistake as well.
Oh, I bet after that
Yeah,
long, because you go
but
past that 50-minute mark and you're like, we're good. We're there. All right. And just to say the wrong name, and you said the director tried to make him calm and thing, and it's okay and all the rest of it. But it was like I felt like I'd let everyone down because it was like a full team effort.
No, do you know what? Ashley was absolutely amazing to work with. He is such a nice guy and such a great actor as well. I mean, we were just surrounded by great actors in that episode, and even in like the kind of the more kind of short, even in the kind of, you know, the shorter scenes and the kind of the less, you know, the scenes that you can argue are, you know, maybe slightly less integral to kind of Owen's storyline and what have you, you know, like the interaction between you know, Hannah Graham and that student, stuff like that. You know, it was still just amazing. Those scenes were still just amazing to watch.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's crazy because even like the kind of the supporting scenes to the core storyline were also incredible.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really added to it. Yeah, and
Do those scenes, like say that scene specifically in that episode 2, when you do go into the other classroom, is that giving someone some time to do something else, or is it just that element of the script that just wanted to happen so that there was a nice little round off of the young girl's character?
Yeah, I think
so
it was just to show the impapt of the whole thing on her, right? You know,
that wasn't to give Lee another little kind of 20 seconds to get down the house and round the corner.
No, there wasn't. Oh, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of running around with all of us in the background. Yeah, we're all kind of flying around to different places. But no, that scene, as far as I'm aware, was 100% to kind of tell her side of that story, basically, and that you know, this whole situation impacted a lot of people, and she was the girl's best friend, right? Yes. So, you know, and it was important that we heard from her and how she was affected by all this, which is part of, you know, what makes I think the whole story so powerful. Is it really shows the impact of this kid's decision on everybody's lives, you know, which is also kind of what's so brutal about it in many ways, you know.
Beautiful, everything, as you said, the acting, powerful, brilliant script. And I just want to get the two of you kind of back into that little mode. So it's the day you're starting to do, you know, the second take or the first take, and it's getting close to your time. How are you preparing yourselves for that moment so that, you know, you got to stay calm? You got to keep, you can't start getting more anxious as it's coming to you. So what are you doing? Just talk us through as they first kind of roll video, turnover and action. What are your processes then through for that hour?
I think both Aaron and I, we talk through stuff a lot. I think we're quite good at communicating with each other. We work together, and I think a lot of what we did was really kind of just make sure we were always so well prepared. You know, everything was looked after on the kit side of things, so that we could fully, and we'd talk through the shots or any, you know, there was often small little adjustments to the shot and things like this. We'd always just keep. I think one of the most important things on any film set is just keep communicating, keep passing information down the line to whoever you're collaborating with, because it just makes everybody's lives easier and keeps everybody calm. And I don't really felt like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to hear Aaron's perspective. We've talked about it a lot between us, but I don't really ever feel like there was a moment where we felt like the kind of pressure got to us in any kind of severe way, because it was such a nice environment to work in. Like the people and the crew were really nice, and Aaron and I get on really well. But yeah, he definitely felt the pressure and felt the kind of the tension of carrying the weight of the show and being at the end of this massive sequence. But I think other than that, it was just, I think a lot of the time we just made sure we were really well prepared, didn't we? You know, we had all our stuff together, you know, plenty of water so we could kind of, you know, remain hydrated and stuff, and just simple stuff like that, right? Just so we were kind of like keep our heads in the game and just stay in the zone we needed to be in.
I think the only time when I was really feeling the pressure was and I almost lost my marbles was I'd have a cue throughout each take where I needed to start, you know, plugging the drone in, making sure putting it in its like takeoff position and what have you. And one of the things the drone needs in order to take off is a GPS lock.
Oh, and, God,
I had the drone plugged in, ready to go for my cue. It was all sat there, ready to go. It had a GPS lock. I'd done an arms test and everything to make sure it spooled up, and it did. And then it got to like the bit where they were running outside, and I thought, I'm just going to check it again, make sure I'm extra ready. Just lost GPS lock, and I'm like, great. So now my drone,
you can't fly. You know, for those people that don't know anything about it, what can you do without a GPS lock? What can you do?
You can't. I mean, you can take off without a GPS lock, but you're not allowed to, because if it doesn't have a GPS lock, the drone doesn't know where it is. So, and if you have a failure in flight, it can't return itself home, and it will just try and find somewhere else. It will just leave. So you're not allowed to take off without a GPS lock. So it got to that, and I was like, shit, there's the drone won't take off. Oh my God, they're almost at the end of this take. Everyone's absolutely nailed it. Everyone's on like, a high because the take's going so well, and the drone's going to let it down. So I was like moving it around, power cycling it, and it didn't want to work. And then all of a sudden I moved it and it worked. I was like, fuck. So then I basically chucked it at the grip. So I was like, right, get in position, go, 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 go. And then, and then ran back to my monitor so I could see down the line to the leisure center, took off, and it was fine. But that was the only real bit of the shoot where I was like felt under pressure and thought, oh shit, I'm going to get a bollock in here.
Even though it's nothing to do with you, it's not your fault. We do take on the responsibility of the equipment. Yeah. With film crew, it's like, oh fuck, I should have done all the rest of it. But it all, like, when it's supposed to be fine, when it's supposed to work, it's just the film gods that are just going to test your nerves a little bit. Just going to let a sprinkle.
I had it there waiting. I did an arms test. I was so prepared for each take. I was always like, I want to make sure I'm ready. I don't want to let everyone down. And obviously then the drone just goes, yeah, I don't feel like it today. Or I don't feel like it right now. And I'm like, please. But it was all good. Gosh. And pressure makes diamonds and all that.
Yeah, you got it. And then that I'm not sure how many of the takes worked perfectly and which one they chose, but when you did get the take completed, what was that feeling?
It was the last take.
It was the last one. On the last day.
It was the last take on the last day. That's what they used.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what reasons? What reasons? Because of mistakes and things, or just
so many reasons. I mean, like for example, there was one take earlier that we had to stop at the window handoff. That was actually the one. Aaron remembers that because I came out like a bit shaken up afterwards because I was doing this part of the shot where I literally have to run through this tiny gap between the kids' chairs and the desk. And I'm obviously conscious, like, I'm a big guy, I'm carrying a camera, I'm running really fast. I don't want to accidentally hit a small child or anything like that. And during one of the takes, the kid that was closest to the window, in reaction to everything that was going on, he obviously just wasn't thinking, he just like pushed his chair out and like just closed the gap that I was running through, basically. And I literally had to like stop mid-sprint and kind of like dive onto the desk with the camera next to me.
No.
And so one take we had to completely bail out of because I was just like, I'm not going to mow a small child down with a Ronin. No. And I kind of like, I came out of the classroom after that. Aaron goes, like, what happened? What happened? It goes, I just had to dive onto a desk to avoid a small child, during the take. But things like that happened. We got rained off once for almost a whole day, I think. The wind was really difficult as well because, unfortunately, if the wind starts to get every kind of mechanical device has a limit, and drones obviously have a upper limit of the wind speed they can operate in. And what became really difficult, even when the wind was within the limits of the drone, was the maneuver that Aaron had to do at the other end. Not everyone kind of realized this, but he was obviously flying really fast and then had to rein the drone in and then come into this very gentle, precise move at the end. And unfortunately, when the wind was kind
into
of gusting
two people's hands,
into two people's hands, like a lot of people have to appreciate it's an incredible maneuver that he pulled off. And
world champ,
even with
so that's why he's a world champ.
world champ, hey champ. But like, even with, you can imagine how hard that kind of maneuver is with no wind and no gusts or anything like that. But imagine if you've got, say, like 20-mile-per-hour winds gusting on and off every 2 seconds, and you're trying to be precise with a drone that big down to the level of centimeters in terms of precision.
I think an important thing to remember as well with the 4D package specifically is that it's not designed to be flown under a drone. So, let alone on a really, really windy day. So, we were battling all kinds of things where, that we were flying along and the shot would just bump slightly because the 4D was struggling to maintain power to keep it stable in the wind. And all that
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
a
stuff
couple
as
of
well.
times
So
the 4D lost it as well, just from the being overpowered by the wind, because the wind, because when you got to think that when you're flying, it's not just the actual wind speed, it's the wind speed you're generating from the direction you're traveling in. So
Yes.
if you're flying at 50 mile an hour and the wind's blowing 30 mile an hour towards you, that gimbal's getting hit with like 80 mile an hour of
Yeah.
kind of collective wind force. So yeah, we had a few situations where that was a problem.
yeah,
But yeah, it was just, we were definitely up against it, I think, because with the weather and just the difficulty of the shot. And I think we nearly got it on the second to last take, didn't we, Aaron? It kind of was really close. It was
yeah.
kind of,
I think the second to last take was there were the two different shots, weren't there? And basically
yeah,
the two final takes were perfect. It was just the differentiation of the two shots that
Oh,
I
right.
think the
So the
producers
last
want.
day, you do 2 shots a day. The last day, they're both perfect, but slightly different. What is one
Yeah,
with and without Stephen?
yeah. Oh no,
Okay.
they both had Steven in, but
Okay.
it was
yeah,
two variations of drone shots. So one was the original shot where they just added Steven into that shot, and
Yeah.
then the final one was landing at the crime scene.
Okay. So you've spent all week. You've kind of been rained off on some of the days. You've had things not go perfectly well, and then that last day for the shot in the morning and the shot in the afternoon, it all just went perfectly.
yeah,
I think that sums up for me the nature of the show, the type of people that we are in the British film industry, where like we want it to happen, it needs to happen. How do we make it happen? And we practice, we rehearse, and we shoot it. We have world champions on the floor. We've got experienced people that are creating the gear that is being used. Just now, just to kind of, because we've been around the 45-minute mark. Just have a little wrap up on that last day, and the first take goes perfectly and beautifully. You all sit down, you have an amazing lunch. I'm assuming everyone's energies are just fucking sky high. You then nail
Yeah.
the second take. That day, just talk to me about how that day went and the feelings and the wrapping out.
I think in the beginning, the everyone was sort of feeling the pressure a little bit because it was the final day and we didn't have a perfect take in the bag. Um,
yeah.
we had like some okay ones, but I think the general vibe was that we hadn't absolutely nailed it yet.
We had some ones that were like an 8.5 out of 10, weren't they? We
Yeah,
were looking at it kind of going, well, we could definitely do better, I think, in our heads,
Mm.
weren't we? Yeah,
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 yeah, for sure. But then, like as we, got the first take in the bag, everybody was feeling a lot better. I think Matt's been on record saying that he cried after the second to last take because it was an emotional moment for him that he managed
Wow.
to. Everyone had managed to pull together and create something so cool and amazing. And then obviously we got the final take as well, which was another banger.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah.
So I think by the end of the day, everybody was relieved that it was over. I think because it was such a high pressure shoot.
Mm.
But at the same time, I think everyone was a little bit disappointed because it was such a cool experience and
Yeah,
just something new. Like me, for example, I've never taken a drone off at one location, followed it out of someone's hands, flown it to another location, and then landed it in the same people's hands again. Like it was definitely a very new experience for me, and I think a lot of people as well. It's very
yeah. Well,
unique.
we worked it out. We travelled just shy of half a mile, didn't we, down
It was
that
about
road?
350 meters or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
it
was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I think for me, like the nicest moment after we got the second take in the bag was when we came back into the school. So it was all of us. It was like it was the core kind of camera team. Me and Aaron, the grip team. Everyone that kind of been involved in that last part of the sequence, and we kind of came back into the courtyard of the school, and we got this like amazing like round of applause from everyone, and everyone was like cheering and whooping, and it was just like. It was just a really cool moment, like, because there'd been so much pressure on that last day, I think, because so much kind of like such a big build up of kind of tension, and then we kind of come back and everyone's just so happy, and then it was kind of like Aaron said, followed by that weird kind of almost like sadness that it was all over. Then it was kind of
Mm.
that was it. We've done it. We've kind of had this amazing kind of moment of like several weeks up in the up north, kind of working together as a team, and now that is it. It's done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and it's a wonderful episode. It's a wonderful program, and I think it's such a poignant topic for now, because we have opened the doors to, social media and mobile phones and all the rest of it, and for someone to write the script that they wrote, and it felt like so many different relationships that we all know someone like it. The parents, the daughter, the teacher that
Yeah,
isn't really a great teacher, and then the little bubbly, like everyone that was in that episode, you knew. And it didn't feel like actors in a school. It felt
yeah,
like a documentary. And that, I
yeah.
think, the beauty of how it worked and getting sucked into the process, and the beauty of the acting, and the beauty of the camera work and the lighting, and all of the from an AD's perspective, the school sequence up and down the thing, getting all the kids out, getting all
Oh,
getting those two
Sarah,
girls to
Sarah,
say their line.
Sarah,
I mean,
Sarah, the first AD. I mean,
absolutely
yeah, wow,
phenomenal,
yeah,
phenomenal processes,
Yeah.
because it's got to be timed. They've got to be at that place. They've got to be there, and half the time with especially with background acting, they're kids. Most of them have never been on a film set before. Potentially, they
yeah,
might clock the camera. They might say something. They might look a bit weird.
Yeah.
Everything just felt
I,
real.
I remember when we were doing the drone shot, because we had a lot of SAs out the front who were all kids, and I remember the AD shouting at the kid, not shouting, but like repeating to the kids a lot, going, "Don't look at the drone, don't look at the drone," because they see the drone go past, and they just naturally, as anyone
Naturally,
would just look at the drone and go, "Whoa!" But
yeah,
obviously, then they're looking at the camera, and
yes,
it doesn't look right. So like, but they're obviously being kids, their attention span probably wasn't that great, and they
sure.
kept forgetting that they weren't supposed to look at this drone. And not, it's quite a big drone that makes a lot of noise. So if
Mm,
this thing's going past you at some speed, you are naturally going to want to look at it. But I
mm.
remember that was one of the battles they were fighting, because
It all looks
it's tough,
cool.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's a cool thing. It's like, for most
Yeah,
of those kids, that moment on that program will be their 15 minutes of fame
yeah.
on camera, and they'll
yeah.
remember it, and they'll enjoy it, and they'll love it, and they'll be able to talk about that. Cut to 60 years time. Hi, Granddad. Oh, did I tell you about the time I was? And then they'll put
Yeah,
Adolescence on, and it will,
Yeah, yeah.
And I
yeah.
think
Well,
I'm so happy, and I'm so honored that the two of you kind of came on to talk about the experience. Um,
oh,
we
thanks for
get to
having
this
us. It's been
point
Thanks
in
for having
the
us.
episode, and I kind of give you the floor just in case there was anything that you wanted to talk about, anything that I haven't asked that you thought might be interesting for the listeners to hear.
Well, I think one of my favorite things that I always remember, and I just found it really amusing, was it was quite a big AD team to manage
Yes,
that amount of actors and extras and everything, run by Sarah Lucas, who did an incredible job. And what always made me laugh about the whole AD team is a lot of them were dressed up as teachers or students to blend in,
clever.
because it's just much easier for them to kind of remain hidden during the
Yes.
sequence. And it was just really funny just bumping into them randomly between takes and rehearsals and seeing them kind of like, in full costume, like some of them dressed up as school kids and stuff. It was like hilarious. It was just a really fun little fact that not everyone maybe would have noticed. And well, I'm sure hopefully they didn't notice if we all
No,
did our jobs right. But
no.
that when you were working on the show, you kind of like, oh my god, this is hilarious. Just
Yeah, yeah.
kind of seeing the people you're working with in between setups, kind of just wandering around in school uniform or geography teacher costumes and things like that. It was great.
Amazing. Aaron, anything you'd want to just finish off the up with?
I think, to be honest, I think everything that I can remember fondly about it has been covered. Um,
Amazing.
I think I'm pretty happy and pretty content.
Amazing. All right. Well, look, chaps, on the film gods, the last couple of questions. I always like to give you the floor. One, to give a little bit of advice to your younger self, which the person who you were 10, 15, 20 years ago that wants to get into the industry is. You're kind of talking to them. And then we finish off the with just giving you the floor to say any thanks or any projects or anything that you want to wax lyrical about. So, who wants to start with any, or who has any advice for their younger self?
Um, I think for my younger self, I'd probably just say, I want to trust the process and enjoy the journey a little bit more. I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed when actually I should probably live more in the moment and enjoy the experiences that I get a little bit more.
Amazing. Nice. And James, who seems to be back
Yeah.
into full adolescence mode in between takes, just moving between locations.
Yeah.
Have you got any advice for your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, God, if I could speak to my younger self now, having done all the things that I've done in the industry, I would just say be patient. It's all gonna come. You're gonna get to live out your dreams. I mean, if I look back and think of when I first started in this industry, like nearly 2 decades ago, and imagine that I'd be winning multiple awards, working on Marvel films, working on big Netflix shows. I never dreamed of doing all of that stuff when I first started out, working on low budget music videos and indie films and short films and all those kinds of things. That was all a pipe dream for me back then. And I would just say be patient. I say patience is a wonderful thing. I think it takes time to really achieve anything of note in this industry. And I think if you stay the path and you try and do the best job that you can, be a good person, be a good communicator, and good things will come.
Beautifully said. Absolutely beautifully said. Right, so Aaron, I kind of give you the floor. Anyone you want to give a shout out to, projects, people, anything or how people can find you on socials?
I think shout outs wise, I'll shout out the company that I work for, the Helicopter Girls. If you need any drone shots in your production, then give the Helicopter Girls a shout. And yeah, my socials, you can find me at baz.cole on Instagram. It says Aaron Cole in my bio if that's easier. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Aaron_Cole1 on TikTok. And yeah,
nice.
Happy days.
With his behind the scenes viral 2.3 million, whatever you've got. Absolute legend. What about you, James?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, JD Camera Op. That's my Instagram page. Right. And yeah, I'd love to give a shout out. Yeah, I'd love to give a shout out to all the awesome people we work with on Adolescence. I think they're amazing. Just all of the cast, all of the crew, just phenomenal work. It's an experience I never forget. And hopefully we will get to team up again in the future.
Amazing. Yeah, so ladies and gents, one absolutely cracking chat. Two absolute legends in the game. I honestly thank you so much for coming on, chaps. It's really been a beautiful, beautiful chat. And ladies and gents, obviously like, subscribe and share. Send it to people that you think we're going to want to listen. And until we meet again, that is a wrap. So that was a chat with the king or queen in the game. I'll give it a shout at the end so you all know the name. It's the Film Gods Podcast. The what? The Film God Podcast.